and they have far higher morbidity, they have higher mortality, and it's ridiculous. You know, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And they're saying, well, that train's left the station. Pappas tells me that over and over and over. We're never going to be able to go backwards. And I said, well, Ted, just look at yourself and what your impact is. Your impact on students and residents and your patients, for God's sakes. Because acute care surgery doesn't develop a continuity of care. They just don't do it.
Sure.
And it's not good for the patients. It's not good for them. So the college knows this, and they're trying innovative ways to start trying to enhance general surgery and the training of general surgeons. And I don't see why we don't want to be a part of that and take a leadership role. I mean, we did it for a generation, you know. So, you know, that's something that we can do to be beneficial. And indeed it helps in terms of the diversity of the training, because you can say yay or nay all you want, but female surgeons are more attracted to taking care of problems that are chronic, problems that are family, following people for a number of years. They get a lot of satisfaction out of that, whereas males are more involved with self-importance. They are. I mean, you know, if you just take the two genders and say who is driven by security and who is driven by opportunity. The males are driven by opportunity and the females are driven by security. They like this. They don't look at things like prestige and competition. And they also don't look at things like, I'm going to do this for the next 35 years. They may do it for 7 or 9 or 10 or 12, but males are more likely to do it for 35 or 40. And if you're talking about other things and diversities, you know, you can take different backgrounds of training African Americans for the African American communities, because like it or not, you're always, as long as you and I are alive, we're going to have African American communities, and they're very sensitive to that. And they will advance it, and they'll be role models for the kids coming along and that sort of thing. I just think it helps. It would help everybody.
Going back to acute care, even people who do a general surgery residency today, over 80% are going to fellowship.
Yeah.
So how do you get a thyroid surgeon or a breast surgeon taking general surgery call and, you know, doing a Hartman's in the middle of the night if they haven't done one in 5 years?
Well, I can tell you, I did breast surgery here for a generation, just as good or better than all 5 or 6 or how many of them there are breast surgeons that are here right now. And I've done a right colon while one of our colorectal surgeons was getting set up to do the case, and mine was in the recovery room. So, you know, the thought that a general surgeon can't do more than just breast surgery or more than colorectal surgery is ridiculous. So, you know, you just have to make general surgery more attractive to people and train them and turn them out. We always did that. And indeed, we were the very first ones, and Saviston recognized this, as we were a big heart program, no question. and that was sort of what defined the department.
And that came before Savitson or with Savitson?
With Savitson.
Because of his cabbage research, or?
Yeah, it was with Savitson, and Savitson was very smart. What he did, he had already gotten this huge NIH grant for the teaching of residents and attracting residents to teaching and research. And that was the big teaching grant. That was hundreds of million. And so he decided that he would add on 2 years. But he didn't call him a fellow. He hated fellows. He hated fellowships. He thought that detracted from the training of surgeons. And so he called it, those 2 years were a teaching scholar. And he got funding for that. So they we could have them for that much longer, or we could have them for 2 more years, and they were teaching scholars. They were going to be only academicians, no question about that. But it could be a teaching scholar in terms of arrhythmias or pediatric or the different techniques for reestablishing flow, because there were a lot of things that were coming along then, and we even had people here right with the original team for the mechanized heart. We had a guy here that worked with the guy that did the initial artificial heart. For example, Chitty, who finished here and was chairman down at East Carolina, was the original one for doing robotic hearts. So, all that came out of the teaching scholars. And the ones that we turned out around the country all were in academic institutions, everywhere. It was Cornell, it was San Francisco, it was Utah, it was WashU, it was Northwestern. It doesn't make any difference, that's what, and he did this, but they weren't called fellows. They were called teaching scholars, and they were defined that they were going to be scholars. They were going to run a laboratory. They were going to be somebody like Carmela.
When do we have our first fellowship?
Well, the first fellowships were actually in transplant, and so when McCann was coming along and he was finishing, he was one of my favorite residents and worked with him a lot. He said, I want to do vascular. And I said, well, we don't have vascular fellowships, but we have transplant. And I said, and down the road, you aren't going to know which way it's going to go. And so why don't you do the transplant? You like it. And because you do understand, Dick, that we're sewing an artery and a vein together, right? And so he did that, and he was in transplant and vascular. But of course he was the driving force, along with our guys like Walt Wolf and Don and Chad, that were working on the aorta and on the heart and on valves, but he was the original one that was pushing EVAR. And so, down the road when they finally pushed him out of transplant, he was doing vascular. He was our vascular guy, and so you don't know, but he took that route, and he was the person.
We've been going about an hour and 15 minutes.